Hey, everybody, and thanks for joining us at the unPAC live event. I'm your host, Kurt Thomas, and today we were able to nail down the CEO and founder of Q-PAC, Matt Kent. He's got some exciting things to talk about and hopefully shed some clarity on things we're doing over here. If you have any questions or comments, please post them in the chat. We are going to save all them until the very end, but we'll definitely get to you. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and announce that the Q-PAC Impact Summit, we have a date, October 17th. Please mark your calendar if you're interested. You can go to our website if you want to learn about it, see what everybody else thought about it that came last year. I think it was a huge success. And I think everybody learned a lot from it. So check it out. And if you want to register, there's a form to fill out there. So Matt, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, let's get
Thanks,
started.
everybody.
So tell me about 2023. Give me the breakdown. How was it for Q-PAC just in general? Was it a good year?
It was a great year. Yeah. Every year for quite a while has been a pretty big year for us. 2023, I think we grew just over 40% in revenue, and which was a lot of growth for us. A lot of new hires, just growth all around. Yeah.
That's great. Tell me a little bit about the hires you're making and
Last year, was primarily a lot of engineering hires. As many know, we are pretty much an engineering focused company, have always been that way, and we had some catching up to do. So I felt like we put a lot of investment there in new areas as well. So
Sure. What would you say your biggest insights last year were?
There's a lot. I guess just the size of opportunity there is in the market. There's just a lot of areas that like have a lot of opportunity to help our customers. So I think just getting more awareness there. Yeah.
Sure. Let's dive into that a little bit. So awareness in the form of, let's talk about in the context of the actual like facility managers and building owners and what some of their challenges are today that or last year that maybe they didn't have 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, from my perspective, it seems like the challenge for these commercial buildings is getting even harder. I think it's a very difficult role to manage some of these facilities. And just with the way the world is kind of post-COVID, I think the competition has increased, with remote work, like whether it's just, accessibility of working from wherever you want, you're kind of competing against that, but you're also competing against what people expect from a building. I think it's really escalated quickly, at least from my perspective. So I think the problem and the challenge is getting harder and harder, which is creating that opportunity to solve things differently.
Sure. So you're saying like the competitive landscape, I guess specifically in like office buildings, the bar has been risen just due to demand of office space has kind of gone down in this remote era where consumers need to be drawn to the building and
Right.
choose to go to work as opposed to just working from home.
Yeah, there's several dimensions. If it's an office, whether that's like an office building or it's like an office for a company that does other stuff, but you could try to politics and like policy your way to get people to want to come, but I think we would prefer here at Q-PAC that we just create an environment that is naturally exciting to be at, right? So it's an escalated expectation of what you get out of being at your office and where you work, and that's just office. I think this is across the board, even for hospitals and airports and like really any facility. I think just in general, the expectations are rising on what you get out of the experience of being in that building.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and the trend that's continuing to occur, right? I think 12.7% of all full-time employees in 2023 were fully remote. And that number is expected to jump to 22% in the next 2 years, and the landscape's going to become more and more competitive for those.
yeah, I imagine office building construction, took a big hit, and just meeting with building owners who are leasing their properties. I mean, you can tell that the game has changed a little bit in what they have to do to invest and attract the right type of customers and still compete in what they do. So, yeah.
So you mentioned new construction. Tell me about kind of the breakdown of the business that we have here at Q-PAC. I mean, we kind of categorize things right between new construction, retrofit with a new air handler, or retrofitting a fan. Where do you think we get the most success, and kind of what's our distribution between those three areas?
Yeah, that's a good topic. A lot of people who have known us and followed us for quite a while, they really see us as that kit, that fan array kit to solve fan replacement. And I think that's a very accurate way to see what we do. But I think most people do not realize that roughly 3/4 of every product we ship is going into a brand new air handler. I think it's, and I would say the majority of that is due to our own fault of not making that clear. But yeah, whether it's a new air handler, a new building, or an existing building that needs a new fan, we're serving all of them. But the new air handler space is substantial, and I believe it's going to continue to probably be even more of the proportion of what we do.
So you think like the perspective that most people have about Q-PAC is that we were a retrofit only product. Why do you think it is that actually a majority of our business is in new air handlers as opposed to tearing out and retrofitting an old fan?
I think there's several factors. I mean, I don't quite exactly know, but I have to imagine there's many more new air handlers being produced and shipped than there are like service calls to replace an old fan, because some of these fans that we're replacing are pretty big, and there's a whole supply chain around supporting them, whether it's replacing a motor or a shaft or fixing them. So I just think that there's just more new air handlers being sold. And I think that our history, going way back to when we were building air handlers, has us pretty tied to the new air handler market. So I think just the people that are familiar with us are likely to be involved in whether it's new construction or new air handlers. So that has a lot to do with it.
Sure.
And just our own doing. I think the narrative, I think we haven't made it clear. We haven't made enough awareness that we could really contribute in that area. So I think we have a little bit of control over that. And also, I will say that we did get our Q-PAC did start. I guess maybe not start. We started out as a product in an air handler, but we really took off around the idea of replacing a fan in the field because it is incredibly challenging to solve and make it simple. And I think we're very fortunate to have gone through that episode. 8 years of relentless effort trying to solve a field replacement solution because it really trained us how to make the product to what it is today. So although a factory setting, being like in an air handler factory, is a lot easier environment to work in with all the tools and training and everything, it still just makes it that much easier to install there versus the field. So
sure. Yeah, I think it's a good insight. The ratio of our business, how tied to the economy do you think that is? Do you think if the economy took a turn for the worse, that those numbers would flip? Do you think we would start to do more retrofit as opposed to new construction? Or do you think we're pretty disconnected from the economic trends?
I think if the economy macro level shifted to where new buildings slowed way down and big renovation projects slowed way down, and the likelihood of someone wanting a new air handler, I mean, it would have an impact on the pivot to replacement. And we're fortunate to be able to play in both spaces very well. But at the same time, I think due to all the things that we haven't done yet, and when it comes to building awareness around what we can solve and how we're different, I think we can kind of control that growth and continue to grow even unrelated to the economics, the macroeconomics. So
sure,
but we'd have to take that accountability. So
yeah, I find it interesting. I feel like we're fortunate to be in this position where we can go both ways. We can tackle the new air handler, new construction. We're a good fit for that, but also when we need to, we can scale the retrofit side and just be what we need to be, regardless of what the market is. Those are great insights. Tell me what you felt like the biggest challenges were in 2023 for Q-PAC.
I mean, it was a great year. Like I said, every year I'm very proud of the team, and we're really fortunate the position we're in. But I think the hardest thing is just accepting the growth and continuing to grow while trying not to let it erode or affect like our core values and just who we are, and just have too much influence on our identity. I mean, so, because that can easily be kind of an expendable area when you're facing growth. And so I think just having the discipline to not change what makes us who we are and why we're having such a good time being here is really what I would say that's my biggest challenge.
Nice. Cool. All right, let's move ahead to 2024. What's Q-PAC's goals? What are your goals for Q-PAC by 2024, at the end of the year, where you would say, okay, we did this, we have had a successful year?
We'll save a little bit for later, but coming into the year, kind of coming off what I said about last year's challenge of like growing while not sacrificing things that we feel cannot be sacrificed around our culture, is kind of the tone, at least that I'm going into this year, is that we know there's opportunity and we could go fast, but this year's more about positioning ourselves and really investing in the team, and not so much around growth. There's definitely things we could do if we wanted to pull levers to, grow more revenue. Like I think there's options, but that's not what this year's about. I think it's about clarity. I think looking back at how we got here, the story, and just really trying to understand and build our identity and get it crystallized, so that as we're entering the next chapter, we continue to be focused and engaged and confident that we're on the right path. I mean, so this year's more growth internally. I mean, we're growing somewhere, whether it doesn't always have to be revenue, but this year's about growing our team, growing our awareness of what our mission is and what we want to focus on. So. Sure.
Just building a more scalable foundation, would you say?
That's an element of it, is kind of forecasting what's this thing going to look like, making some investments that are not near-term investments in terms of how we want to organize ourselves as a team, how we want to invest in the team. Planning for a bigger future.
So,
do we want to take questions now or later?
We'll take questions at the end.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Feeney.
So, several of the leaders at Q-PAC, we just recently spent 2 days at an offsite doing a category design workshop. Can you just explain, first of all, what category design is, and then talk about why it's important?
I can try. So last year, I think sometime early last year, I was introduced to a book called Play Bigger. I try to read a lot because there's just so much you can learn, and this book had a massive influence on how I think, and I encourage anybody to read it who's interested in category design. But really, it helped kind of clarify how we feel at Q-PAC about what we're building. I mean, we've always felt we're doing things differently. We feel like we maybe aren't fully understood how we're solving the problem and how we're approaching it. And this book really kind of helps get a little bit clearer picture of what we're building. So in general, we feel that we've created something different enough to claim a different category, and Play Bigger is just the start of the concept of category design. So we did hire a consultant. We were able to meet and get really deep on how to build the narrative around what we're creating. And again, it's kind of the theme of this whole year, is to kind of really leave this year solidly understanding what it is that we're creating and how to present it to the world.
Sure. So you're saying there's this gap between how internally at Q-PAC we view our product versus externally how other folks may view our product and how do they utilize it. So just bridging that gap through this category design process is
Yeah.
really the.
And helping us internally as well. I mean, I think it starts internally. Most of the work we're doing is internal, just so that we're all aligned. Because some things are hard to explain when it feels like you're in uncharted waters and you're not mimicking anybody else. You have a hard time articulating that. So anything internally that we can do to make us all more aligned, it just helps us be more productive and efficient. And yeah.
So help me understand why that is important for all of our listeners, and why does a clear picture of what we do, an alignment between what we think we do versus what they think we do, important?
Well, I think in the absence of having this clear, we'll get labeled at the, as the next, like the nearest, closest, most adjacent category. So, we've had a lot of chapters in our evolution, and another consequence of this is how engineering heavy we are. I mean, we've primarily been engineering focused and developing the product, and not really marketers or copywriters or presenting ourselves adequately, in my opinion. So, but I think it's important because even this subtle change of how you label us and what category you put us in has a really big effect on the efficiency of not only the audience's business and how they operate, but their customers and how they process the problems. So I think it makes us more productive and get to move faster and just solve problems quicker. So, yeah.
So let's dive into that a little bit more. Fan array is a category that most of our stakeholders would put us in, and probably rightly so.
Yeah.
At the moment. So tell me a little bit about why we're not just leaning into that and how we're different than a traditional fan array.
Yeah, I think if you go way back to when we first started, and if you have any experience building air handlers and just seeing the industry, it's very common even to this day that air handlers are leaving with a single fan. Fan arrays have been around for a very long time, decades, and the value they create for the customer, is pretty well understood, right? Like the customer that we're serving doesn't necessarily like desire the fan array. It's just that they desire the outcome that the fan array creates, right? A fan array adds more redundant components so that there's less downtime, less failure. There's a sense of more reliability, right? There's also the modular aspect where maybe by chopping the system up into smaller bites, it's able to fit in tighter spaces. And that can be for new construction and just the footprint that you're up against and shortening your air handler. But it can also be for retrofit and being able to fit it in the building. I mean, these are all very well understood aspects of why you might want a fan array. But if you look at just how we started and then all the evolution of getting into fan arrays, latching onto the ECM technology, being really one of the first to like push it really hard, and then getting hit with the retrofit idea of like having to ship this product to the field and all the chaos that comes with scoping the wiring, which was the biggest catalyst for us to invent our Quick Connect box, right? So we developed this Quick Connect architecture that allows us to take all this scope of work that would otherwise have to be performed in the field and bring that scope into a factory setting where it can be not only highly efficient and cost effective to build that element of the product, but also really consistent and predictable and high quality so that you have a higher chance of success when you're shipping this kit, right? So there's so many elements, and so that would be like improving upon this fan array concept, right? We took a fan array and then we made it a single point device, but the term single point in the industry is pretty widely adopted. So when you say single point, to most people who've been in the industry, it's not clear. They'll build their own conclusion about what you mean by the single point, but it's not going to reflect, if they were to tell you what they expect, what we actually do. So it's kind of, so at the end of the day, going way back to where there was a single fan, if you're designing around a single fan, there's just so many benefits to it. It's just so simple to communicate and to understand that ultimately by taking all the value that a fan array has created and converting it back into a single fan, you really solve what the customer was really looking for in the first place. And that's kind of where we're heading. So,
Okay.
It's hard to completely predict at the moment, but I think the direction is good. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Sure. And so they kind of, would you say our current product that we ship is a fan array, or where would you exactly classify that?
Yeah, I think it's really fair to call it a fan array. I think it's going to take more work and evidence and engineering and design to get to where I think we're going to go. But I see it shifting, and I think the team's getting behind it, and we feel that's where we're going to really help the market understand that we've really created something different.
Okay. So there's something in the works that's going to be different that you think is really going to separate our future product will really separate ourselves from a normal traditional fan array.
Correct. And it's I've been testing this for over a year now. After reading Play Bigger, just doing my own experimentation, and it Play Bigger and other books. Once you start with that one, there's a whole other series that you can get on, but it talks a lot about language, and I've just become fascinated with the subtle changes that simple language can change. And it has a massive effect. I mean, you can get on the phone and you could be talking to someone who is in need of a fan replacement, and the moment that you say that you want to offer them a fan array, they can build their own awareness and adjacency to what that means for them just in that one statement. And it can really cripple the process. It can extend scope that didn't actually need to be there, right? Yes, we are a fan array, but when you put us in the fan array camp, many people can imply, the wiring scope to every single motor and what it's going to take to control. And they have this conclusion of what that category looks like, and it doesn't quite meet exactly how we're going to land in it. So we know that it's not good enough. So it's not driving enough clarity.
Are there any sneak peek features you would like to share, or maybe talk about some of the technology in terms of some of the hires you've been making around firmware and software?
Yeah, so we've almost 10% of our staff, our total staff today, are embedded electronics engineers. So that should give at least some insight to where we're going. So we're working really hard on building our own microcontrollers, our own circuitry for power and controls. We don't just wake up and try to go reinvent something. We're very disciplined about making sure that we're putting our engineering efforts into things that are completely novel and no one else can solve. So really the Quick Connect is, why we're here. I mean, if we had never invented the Quick Connect, I don't think we'd even be having this unPAC, and I think playing off of where that thing started and how it's going to segue into a completely new category of fan, that's the path we're on. Sneak peek, I mean, I think we'll be able to offer features and functionality that's never been seen before, just because the way we're approaching the process. I find it interesting how people understand, even in the fan array category, about maintenance, because we're really big on how the end user uses our product, right? Maintenance is a massive one. Okay, maintaining a really large fan, we all, those that have been in the industry, it's an undertaking, and there's competencies that are required that are really getting hard to find. So this idea of maintenance, when you go with an ECM player, there's always been an element of concern around selecting a model and needing to keep a consistency with that model. And are you going to have access to the model, right? And we see a path that gets to being a lot more friendly to maintain, and and interchangeability, and just that's one element of it. Sure. It's just the ease of maintenance. So
yeah, interesting. Well, on that note, I would like to announce that we are going to have an AHR booth in 2025, and this new product, we will be showcasing it. So I think it's going to be a really exciting time for the entire company and all of our stakeholders. And maybe we'll leak a little bit more about it in the future. But
yeah, I'm excited. We've always gone to HR, and we've been lately having our our events, and it's going to be really great to have our first like debut booth. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hit some questions and see what we have. All right. Matt, you want to talk about the air handling unit manufacturers? Ben, thanks for your question. Any resistance from AHU manufacturers, and how have you adapted?
Yeah, a little. Yeah, there's been resistance, but I think it's all pretty fair resistance. I mean, they're used to doing certain things a certain way. These people that build air handlers really understand the product, and they understand how to design. Some of them know how to build their own fans. They've been working with fans forever, so we're not teaching them anything new. But I think our approach is sometimes not obvious at first on what they're buying. I think we get misunderstood. We've kind of heard it all at this point. We get misunderstood as like a controls package, or we resell ECM. Like we're a distributor. And I think they're all fair understandings, and I think it kind of ties into what I said earlier, is that we kind of owe it, to our audiences to really clarify exactly how we're solving these problems. So that's what we're working on. But it's been fun. I love air handling unit manufacturing. I mean, it's where we started. So I find it very rewarding to meet with teams that are struggling with some of the things that we're aware and we struggled with ourselves, whether it's supply chain or design and just speed, like moving quick. I mean, meeting lead times. And so we're able to really help manufacturers with that by working with us. So.
Perfect. Let's see what else we got. On the software, is there any chance to add RPMs on the possible configuration screen and quip selection tool, both operating and max speed?
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Thanks for your question, Cameron.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. At the moment, no, and probably I can't see that coming back. I think it would be really good for me, and maybe we can talk, Cameron, another time. I'd love to understand and explore what the RPM solves for you, and just better understand the need for it. We made a pretty big pivot in our product architecture to get away from communicating directly to each ECM motor over Modbus. We like I said, we went through years and years of iterations of design and really tried to squeeze out any fat and inefficiency within the system, and getting rid of the communication to each motor eliminated our ability to actually read the revolutions per minute of the motor. Mm-hmm. So I think
he's asking more around in quips.
Oh, like on the curve. Okay, interesting. That's another. Yeah. So we display our performance curves as like the set of fans. So I'm actually not certain. I guess it's not showing anymore. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. But it may not. The way our system modulates, it may not be an attribute that we're going to invest in. To be honest, cool. Just because of how many motors we'll have in our system. Yeah. But I'd like to learn more on where that could add value, because there may be something underlying, a more of a root cause.
Sure. For that. Yeah, thanks for the question. Brett, are there any focus on acoustical improvements into the new product versus the current offer?
Acoustics definitely has gone down in priority. I mean, it was interesting before COVID. I felt like sound levels and attention to that was a much higher value, at least from people asking. And it seems like it hasn't. I don't know what changed, but it'll be in general a factor all the time, because we want to make sure we understand the buildings we're going into in general, commercial comfort cooling applications. So sound levels will be we will determine what our product's tolerance level is for how loud it can be, and make sure we meet the needs of the market. But I wouldn't say there's any major push, and I'd be interested to know what specifically, there might be a segment that's much more obviously like theaters and things where you don't want to hear anything, but we kind of defer the acoustical attenuation to other products to help with that. So.
Thanks for your question. All right, Kevin, is there a plan to incorporate more safety accessories like fan screens?
Yeah, that'll be coming, I think, with the direction we have the product to. I mean, we've gone through a few iterations in the past. We kind of leaned on the ECM manufacturers for their solution that they would have to screen like the upstream side to prevent like filters from flying inside of it or someone accidentally putting their hand in it. But that hasn't been like really a viable solution from a supply chain and just managing it. So I think I could see development of our own solution for protection on the upstream side. On the actual fan side, I think if we develop a solution for like the equivalent of what a fan cage would do when you have a traditional fan cage, I think it's going to look a lot different than we've done in the past. In the past, we did have a solution that was like an individual cage that went over each ECM, and it's very cumbersome and hard to build and just created a lot of other barriers. So we'll keep listening and looking at the market, but we also just promote putting a door switch and turning, killing the power and just not putting yourself in harm's way at all. But I know that that's not always an acceptable answer. So it's definitely something we'll be looking at.
Cool. Thanks for your question. Hey, John, any control panel point additions coming in the future or other customizable IOs to the BMS vendors are always asking for some more versatility to tie their system without having to their own? Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, we've kept it pretty simple deliberately. We've had our basic and premium for quite some time now. Trying to keep it simple so that when you're buying, there's less decision making. But I do think that as we work on the new product, we will begin to look at the higher level where our control panel is serving the market, and I think there's a big opportunity for us to expand upon, in both directions, like a more premium package that maybe answers some of the things John's talking about. So we'll be getting feedback around that probably later this year. And then even I didn't mention earlier, but even more basic than basic, right? So like the new fan that we're working on building should be, you could work with it directly and treat it like, there may be even a chance where you can leave the VFD in place and just run our fan off the VFD. So just thinking more aggressively around the first cost approach for customers who maybe don't want all of what even our basic package is pretty featured rich. So I could see us expanding up and down around the controls, the external controls.
Sure. You mentioned running our fans off of a VFD. I feel like that's going to pop up a ton of questions. Can you maybe expand a little bit on that and add some clarification?
Like when you think about a traditional, so you got a fan and then you got some that still, maybe don't have a drive, but, so you have an AC motor fan, blower, could be a plenum fan. You pair it with a VFD, and if the shaft fails or the bearing fails or the motor fails or the wheel falls apart or the spring isolators fall apart or you just want to plan and just and improve it and make maintenance easier. If we could have an offering that's a drop-in replacement for that and very simple and aggressive when it comes to first cost to where you're not having to change other assets, we feel that might be an opportunity for the customer to it might be a little bit more inviting and less intimidating. Right now, if you buy an FS1 system, it's understood that you swap out your drive, you take your drive out, and typically where the drive was located is where you're putting our FS1 control panel. And that works really well because the power infrastructure typically works out. And that will probably be the most popular way, but just giving more freedom and more options to maybe leave the drive in place. Because a lot of times the drive is already connected to the BMS. It's already working really well. It doesn't have to change the frequency of the power. This is just something we're looking at. This is kind of a teaser.
So would a certain version of our product require a VFD, or could you just leave the VFD in place and put in bypass mode?
Yeah, it would just be in place, and we'd have a sequence of getting the drive to be applied to work with our product. Yeah.
From a communication standpoint, but not necessarily a modulating the frequency?
No. It would just be
power.
bypassing the power. Yeah.
Okay.
Because in the past, I mean, you know this, in the early days when people still were learning EC, I mean, it still happens today probably. People putting drives like in series with an ECM, you know, not realizing that there's variable speed already built in. Right. So, but just again, it goes back to many drives already have a disconnect. Many drives are already talking to the BMS system using BACnet. I mean, they're very feature rich. So if there's ways to simplify the buying process and the ease of access to what we're solving, I mean, that's just one area, but yeah.
Okay.
But to John's point, hearing out larger scope projects and being able to help assist on those controls items for the building automation team, we're definitely going to be looking into that. So, side note, what do you say?
Yeah, thanks, John. John says,
thanks.
Congrats on a great 2023 and cheers to continued growth. And
appreciate your help, John.
Yeah, thanks, John. Eddie, you mentioned in the sneak peek that Q-PAC fans would be more serviceable. What's coming that will allow a traditional EC fan to be serviced as opposed to being tossed into the landfill? And that's a question from Chilton. Thanks.
Oh, hey, Chilton. Infinitum. You know, we've done tens of thousands. I mean, I don't know our total ECM count, but it's a lot. And it's always bothered me, and not just me, I think most of us, but that like one will come in even to us. So we haven't even done our post process and like shipped our product out. So, and it'll be like chipped, or like the powder coating will be defective, or like things that don't even actually even change the performance, or maybe the inlet plate is like bent, you know, it's still functional, but we're not going to sell it as a new product. And just the fact that we instantly recycle it, like right then it was produced, you know, last week, new, recycle. That hasn't seemed to change. I have not seen the market shift. I haven't seen, there's been a lot of, I mean, maybe it will ultimately, and we'll have to understand that, but I think there's kind of like there's a junction. Either there will become this service market that fixes them and takes these assets and finds a way to tool up and repair, and that has not seemed to gain any ground at all, given how much rapid growth, at least and that's just our market. I can't imagine globally because ECMs are everywhere. I'm not seeing that happen. So in the absence of that underlying market being created, we're going the other way. We're going to go make it as raw as possible, make it as recyclable as possible, minimize what's being disposed of. Like, we're going to take an approach that does lend itself to more sustainability, and ease of maintenance, while also not, you know, hurting the earth. So, and then that's coming. So, I mean, we see, yeah, I can't give too much information, but yeah, mainly because mainly because we don't really have it figured out.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Okay. Any more?
Yeah, no more questions. We are at about a 15-second delay, so we'll wait a little bit to see if any more come through. Do you have any words of wisdom, or what are you most excited about for 2024, or maybe even just beyond here at Q-PAC?
I just think, every day, I mean, it's just a very special thing I feel like we've got here. It's not fully clear, you know, I'm still learning, and it's just very exciting. I don't know. There's just a lot of opportunity to make a big difference, and the team is super excited, and it's just a very rewarding experience to be part of. So I'm proud, and we're having a lot of fun while doing it, and making a big impact. And we got great customers, and yeah, it's just exciting. So challenging and a little stressful, but can't complain. So
yeah, good. All righty. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for joining us. And again, if you want to come to Impact on October 17th, please go to our website and check it out, see what it's all about, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.